All right, Greg, good to see you again.
Yes, the meeting is live stream. Okay, cool. See
Yeah,
you, Jess.
uh, I'm recording this meeting together because we had and having intention to connect and discuss and explore and actually share a little bit our stories about meditation, because this word we see a lot of everywhere actually, and people are meditating, people are trying to understand what is meditation and how it can be beneficial. So this is all around meditation actually, and meditation actually connected us some years ago, uh, and we're still keeping in touch and have some intention to share our journeys, our study or research of meditation. So maybe you could share about yourself a little bit, who you are, how, what is meditation in your life, what role it's playing, and maybe some background experience about meditation.
Yeah, my first meditation teacher was my father. Um, I became interested in meditation at a young age when I was around 16.
Hmm.
I had been reading a series of books up to that point that were all based around mysticism and life after death, not necessarily meditation related. The only other book that I read at that point that was meditation related was Siddhartha, which was more of a personal account or a story that I could relate to. Um, so my prime focus in meditation was not the actual benefits of the meditation. I was looking more philosophically at what the structure of the universe was and trying to understand that, as a young man.
Mm.
So I discovered that there was like some different levels. So, for example, this weekend I did a meditation retreat and I found this Christian type based book, which is is based on the teachings of Flower Newhouse. So
Mm.
she talks about the 7 levels, and that's more of like a Christian based mysticism.
Yeah.
So I was interested in these types of books where they talk about these different levels. And I was able to discover a couple. I found The Tiger's Fang by Paul Twitchell, who founded Eckankar. I studied extensively Robert Monroe's techniques on out of body experience. And then I found the book Autobiography of a Yogi, which also confirmed my belief in the afterlife as far as how meditation plays into this whole concept. And through my own personal out of body experiences, I confirmed that the afterlife was a real thing, that there's a place that spirits go after they die, and I could also go there. And how does the practice of meditation play into that? So I was looking at it as a much more kind of personal endeavor to raise my consciousness level to one of the higher states of awareness, um, not related to human consciousness, but related to a more etheric, cosmic, transcendental consciousness. And so that was my main motivation to start off with. And because I was a teenager, I was going through a lot of teen angst. I did LSD. I had a bad trip. I wasn't happy. I had moved from Miami Beach to California. So I didn't have that many friends. I didn't have a strong social network. So at that time, I was highly motivated to practice meditation. And I developed a friendship with someone who was a little bit older than me, who was also pretty hardcore into meditation. And we would meditate about 7 to 10 hours every weekend when I
Mm.
was in high school.
Wow.
And so I developed the ability to quiet my mind pretty consistently. I got initiated at that time by my father's guru and by another Indian guru. So I was exposed to the Indian styles of meditation in relationship to Hindu philosophy, which also matched my own personal philosophy about life after death and reincarnation. And there's these different levels. And as I focused on going into this God conscious state through yoga, through a type of, they practice bhakti yoga and kriya yoga, I was able to have a God experience at a very young age. So that convinced me that these different levels were real, that God was real. It wasn't something that was just something that I was reading about. When I saw God face to face, with my eyes fully open, while I was not actually in meditation, I realized like, hey, there is this other reality, and this world is like a dream world, which is talked a lot about in Hinduism. They use the concept of Maya, that Maya is illusion, that we're living in this illusory dreamlike world, which is like a matrix. So we're lost in this kind of construct, and we're born and we die, and we don't know what's going to happen to us after we die. And so there's this there's these unknowns, this mystery. Is
Mhm.
God real? Is there life after death? What happens to us after we die? Is reincarnation something that's real? Do we keep coming back again and again, which is talked about in Buddhism? So all these things were really motivating to me. And that was pretty much how I kind of started off on my journey of meditation.
Wow, wow! It looks like, first of all, what I hear, it was in your teenage, the first experience, and your father was a first, let's call him teacher, or the one who started to share about meditation. And it looks like it started from real deep, the core essence of traditional practices, spiritual practices, and I hear a lot of parallels between different kind of doctrines and, for example, Buddhism and some spiritual practices that you just mentioned, Indian, um, and more and more and more. Because if we take a look, traditional spiritual practices in Eastern world, there's so many. We have, and they are known. We have big philosophies or doctrines that we call Buddhism, Hinduism, and Taoism, and different more, let's call them intervention that emerged from them. And it's a huge gigantic tree of different layers and schools and traditions, and it has a big history. It's it's also what brought me to explore meditation. But my first experience was during my practices in martial arts. I remember myself in school.
Interesting.
So Taekwondo, which is a Korean martial art, and some missionaries from South Korea were very popular in my country that years.
In
And there were, yeah, in
Kazakhstan?
Kazakhstan. Yeah, just mentioning that I'm from Kazakhstan, and which is in Central Asia. And at that period of time, there were a lot of missionaries who brought main ideas of monotheistic values and religion, God, and Christianity, like baptism specifically. But I was interested, first of all, in martial arts. And I dedicated myself some years practicing them and trainings. And at that, during my trainings there, my first experience of meditation was during this training, Taekwondo trainings. They didn't call them meditations, but we observed our breath, we observed, we focused our attention on specific body parts. and it was a half meditation, half praying towards God. So I can understand you, what you're sharing about your experience, the God experience, but I didn't think so deeply at that time about meditation. So, and I came back to meditation when I started to do it like more consciously, especially when I had a existential crisis around 15 years ago. And I started to visit psychotherapy. And one of my group therapy conferences where I've been doing this deep diving into myself through psychology, which is a Western approach and scientific approach that allows oneself to connect with oneself, with feelings, with some deep patterns that my individual complexes or fears or whatever. So during that period of time, I spent a lot of time to explore myself through psychology, especially in terms of the organization where I worked, which is a scientific organization, NGO. And the main goal was to explore different kind of self-development tools and approaches, rational tools, scientific tools. So I was lucky because in this environment of this organization, they created really interesting opportunities to not only work there, but through the rational tools, through the psychology and philosophy, practical philosophy, get to know each other, oneself, first of all, dive and do the personal development, personal self-growth with the help of others, with the help of professionals, with the help of psychologists and so on. And what you were mentioning about the LSD, we had also this experimentation with different kind of psychedelic conferences. It was through the proper setting, and with the support, with the help of people who knew how it works in terms of not just having fun, but really do the therapy through LSD, through MDMA, through DMT. So that was an interesting period of time. And meanwhile, I started to meditate a lot because I found, you said your intention was to go to this core of spiritual, source of the sources and God. But for me, it was there was curiosity how meditation can really be supportive to myself during the existential crisis, and it was really supportive. And I started to feel the effect of it by practicing daily. And I started to do it by myself, by reading books and watching YouTube channels, meditating through the internet and so on, and applications. After 2 years of intensive practices, one of my colleagues in that NGO research organization proposed me to go and dive deeper, more professionally, to do some study of different kind of traditional practices in Asia. So that's how this project emerged, and with the support of this organization, I started to dive deeper. That's how I met you in Asia, if you remember. One of my expeditions were in South Korea, where we met.
I was impressed that you were going to so many different meditation centers and practicing all these different methods. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. And that's, I think, not by accident. I think afterwards we met again, and I was really interested to practice Kriya Yoga. And you, at that point in South Korea, said, yeah, that's nice, very, very deep practice, very, very, it has a very deep effect. And I started to read about it. And then, if you remember, after, I don't know how many months, we met again in India.
Yes.
At ashram in Puri, Odisha, right? And so, yeah, this is an interesting story. And you know what? Also, I had intention to dive deeper and explore and share what was our experience during this retreats in Asia. So, do you want to share and start sharing something about your experience, specifically about Kriya Yoga or Mao meditation? Or
yeah, I definitely do. But I want to ask you first. So, can you just outline real quick? You went to Japan. You went to like, what were the schools that you studied?
Oh, okay. First, it was Vipassana in Myanmar, so early traditions, and by Goenka.
So before that, you had been strictly practicing Buddhism. Is that right?
No, before that, I was practicing by myself without any teacher, just by myself.
Technique you found that were. What was the technique you were practicing?
It was mostly just Satipatthana Sutta, which is actually Buddhist practice, but Vipassana, I started to read a lot, and then with my colleagues in that NGO organization, we explored like the theory of it, about meditation, about Buddhist meditation, about Taoistic meditations, and about Hinduistic meditations. And our main goal, I wasn't alone, and people with academical knowledge, they helped me a lot to figure out and choose and make a list of practices that that were be practiced by following traditions and going there, actually getting this initiation and follow all these stricted rules that they are providing in order to dive deeper and experiential level to feel the effects and of these practices. So they helped me a lot. So that's why before going to that expeditions, I spent a lot of time to read and analyze all this information about how meditation works in different traditions. And we had a list of Vipassana, and in that list was Zazen practices. Then it was Tibetan practices, and we have to understand how Tibetan Buddhism is the huge philosophy, and in that philosophy and in doctrine, many schools, and in many schools they have many different kind of practices. So it was hard to choose, but that's why I started. We decided to start from the basics of the fundamental course about Tibetan Buddhism. That's how I chose and found Kopan Monastery in Nepal, because it's too hard to find a teacher and retreat center in Tibet because of the pressure of China. Of course, we know that. That's why it's more easy to do in Nepal. And Kopan Monastery, actually, very famous one in the world.
I found this teacher that I really like called Geshe Kelsang Gatsum. If you can see it, I don't know if you can read it there. That's
I can. Yeah.
That's the name of one of his books. Here's his photo right there.
There are so many teachers from Tibetan Buddhism. They are coming to the West and share, and they sit at temples and they do their work actually, and it's good. It's cool because people started to have this idea of what is Tibetan Buddhism is. And in my list, just finishing it, was then to visit Kriya Yoga because of you, because during this trip this list was updated, and also it was Gurdjieff sacral dances, and Kriya Yoga, and also there was a Tai Chi, Tsegun, Nigun, Taoistic practices in China. Yes, and then suddenly I realized that there's a Mo meditation, Mo, and then how I put it in the list as well. That's how we met. So six. Okay, it's Vipassana, Zazen in Japan, Tibetan Buddhism in Nepal, Gurdjieff sacred dances and Kriya yoga in India, and Mao meditation in South Korea. So that was a list for the first step, actually, in my research of meditations.
That's pretty awesome. I was really impressed how you were able to kind of put one practice aside and then completely focus into the next practice. You looked very focused when I met you. You were extremely focused.
Well, it's effect of the deliberate, regular, practices that I've been doing at that period of time, and I'm doing it now as well, but just in different way a little bit, because now I teach mindfulness. It's a secular practice, right? So, but at that time of period of time, I was exploring different kind of practices, and I was very open, and I was learning how to be open, and practice something and follow this discipline only without mixing with previous practice that I practiced. For example, after Vipassana, I went to Japan, and I found these two sects, Soto and Rinzai, and I went to first to the temple Hokkyoji, which is very, very old and very authentic temple. When I was there, I was like, oh my God, I'm in the 13th century right now. There is no 21st century, everything was very authentic. All these buildings, all these monks wearing old wearings in tradition. And it was a very interesting experience. And at that time, I realized it's very important not to mix it in the beginning and be what we call practice this beginner's mind, seeing things like for the first time, and at some point just let go all this previous experience. And it's hard, but it's a skill that can be developed, and it helped me a lot to understand more more precisely, I would say, or more authentic or true, what is this practice and what is this for, and what is a philosophy of it, in the core of it, what is the goal of it, actually. But yeah, can you share your experience about Kriya Yoga? And I know that it's not only in your list as well, and Mao meditation as well, but what else?
Yeah, so actually, I wanted to relate to something that you had said, where you were driven by this kind of intense time in your life, and for me that was also the case. I also studied a lot of different types of psychology books. Mostly, I focused on individualism and how to develop a sense of self-esteem, and based on that, I was able to kind of have a certain self-awareness while I was living inside of the meditation group. So I was able to reflect on my experience, and I realized at that time in my life that the meditation wasn't really working for me, and I needed to kind of switch up what I was doing. But it was difficult because you're involved in a group where everyone kind of believes the same thing, and it's very rigid, and there's a type of traditional belief system that says our path is the best path, and if you go out and explore something else, you're potentially going off the path, and you're going to a lesser path. And so I had to maintain my own kind of individualistic philosophy around that, and I had to pretty much keep it to myself. And so I started studying a type of Zen while I was living at the meditation center, and applying those Zen techniques to my practice. Because I found that a lot of Hindu practices, they fail in the sense that they don't teach kind of a proper philosophy. They focus too much on the mythology of, the tradition. And so I was able, through Zen practice, to deepen my own personal practice. And I also found that the two practices matched perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was something that kind of continued on throughout my exploration. And after that, I got into secular Buddhism through Chan meditation. Here in Los Angeles, they have the largest Chan meditation Buddhist temple in the United States. And I would go there to do 7-day silent meditation retreats. And I think I did about 3 or 4 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And they were very informative to my practice because of the traditional, there wasn't a whole lot of guilt, where I experienced a lot of guilt up at the Hindu Meditation Center, because it's a bunch of Americans trying to adopt some sort of philosophy, and they all have some sort of trauma in their life.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all projecting this guilt, and it became kind of like a warfare zone mentally, and no one was fully happy there. And eventually everyone, left, except for a couple people, because it wasn't conductive for like a real way of life. They were trying to, and they were doing their best, but it didn't really translate into something that was sustainable. And I found that I was making several huge mistakes in my own personal practice. So predominantly, I had some sort of sense that I was meditating. So I was getting caught up in this idea of me doing the meditation. And Zen helped me to break out of that and just see what is and see what's happening and focus on the moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when I went into Buddhism in Los Angeles, that also really kind of opened up my practice towards just not having any type of philosophy about meditation at all, just doing it and experiencing it as it happened. And that was a beautiful thing, and that really kind of took me into the next phase of my practice, where I started exploring more meditation groups and opening up myself up to both Buddhist type groups as well as Hindu type groups. And continuing on, I got into Maum meditation because I became severely depressed after a relationship breakup where I was engaged to be married, and I kind of couldn't break out of this depression. And so I took Maum meditation on pretty seriously. So I was meditating like 12 hours a day for like 6 weeks. And then I decided to go out to Korea, where we're meditating about 8 hours a day for like 6 months. And I saw you at the tail end of that. And then we went to go to India after that, met up at the Korea. I went straight from Korea to India and started practicing Kriya Yoga in India. And
how you chose Kriya Yoga? Did you have some previous intentions and experience of practicing it, or how did you do that?
Well, in Los Angeles, they have the Yogananda Kriya Yoga Meditation Center here, which I've been to quite a few times. I had read his book, and just like you, before my trip over to Korea and to India, I was making a documentary in Korea, so I did a lot of research on Kriya, but it was kind of by chance or luck that I found this Kriya meditation group. I was just about an hour away from this meditation center out in Chicago. And so I went and met with the monk, and I asked him to teach me meditation. And he kind of showed me one practice, and we practiced together. And I had some positive results from practicing with him. So I went back and took the full initiation into Kriya Yoga like a month later,
Mm.
and then I broke up with my fiance after that, and so I was kind of lacking a self discipline at that time. So I always wanted to go to the meditation center, because there you could practice a little bit more diligently, and
Mhm.
also they invited me there to do the documentary. But I always felt like the Kriya Yoga masters had a certain they had a certain what's the word, they practiced their technique very well. Like they were extremely accurate in how they practiced, so the results that they had were what they the whole result of yoga is kind of this God realization experience. And all of the masters that I read about in that group had that experience. So I was pretty impressed with the current teacher there who you met,
Mhm.
Prakash, and I really liked being able to study with him.
Yeah, I clearly remember all that practices and all that experience that I had opportunity to live, in a way, because what do you call God realization? It's, yeah, we can call that this by this is using these words. When I can relate to, because I had some mystical experience,
Mhm.
especially practicing Kriya Yoga. And for my skeptical mind, it was something, the previous skeptical, rational mind. It was something, you know, uh, not acceptable or something, because you cannot explain it. And before practicing meditation, I was strictly, trusting this skeptical mind. And but when I started to practice, I started to experience something that cannot be explained. So this is a mystical experience, and especially when I did. First experience was during the psychotherapy, intensive psychotherapy, during 2 years, like select group and individual. Was a lot of moments of catharsis and this, releasing feeling. But at some point, I dived too deep, and I couldn't explain that. What do I experience? And then I was ready to do some psychedelic experience, which is also uh, mystical experience, and I cannot explain by
It's
my
a- to explain, right?
rational mind. Yeah, you can try. I tried to explain it to myself and to but it was something that you just touch it, but you cannot fully explain it with your mind because it's limited, you know.
Right.
And when we say God realization, it's something beyond this human mind,
Right.
because we're not absolute, we're not gods, we're not divine. Of course, we do have this part in us, and we're trying
I
to
would,
search it and find it. And through meditation, I think, my mind thinks, if it found access through meditation, and meditation became this, bridge or a door that started to help me a lot. And my all years afterwards that I'm practicing, it's still opening a lot of things that my mind started to explain, and in a more, abstract way, because rational way sometimes you're limited and science is limited, right? And you go to philosophy, you go to this abstract, metaphorical, mythological, and spiritual way of explaining what's going on during that or this practice, and what the experience is actually very, very expanding you. This expansion
yes.
allows to go beyond your mind and touch it, and you're getting in touch with this, and what I realize, it helps me to see things more truly as they are, the reality, and of course the source,
Mm.
the source of the source, what we call God. And I found my God, you know. I became from this agnostic to spiritual person.
Mm. That's awesome. That's cool.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of going in the opposite direction. I'm going more towards, secular type Buddhism and practicing from that, more religious type philosophy, and entering into it. I find a lot of benefit with where you don't place this kind of like, I feel like you get into a lot of traps when you have too much of a religious philosophy, and you have to, go take a step back and just look at the practice purely as a practice, and what is this practice bringing you in the sense of how are you doing it, and how is it influencing your day-to-day life, and how can you improve your day-to-day life, because it was cool that we were at these meditation centers and we had all these experiences, but then when we come back to reality, it's like, okay, how do you integrate those experiences?
Yeah, that's the main thing.
How do you pay the bills, man?
Yeah. I totally agree with you, and my intention as a research project was to through experiential way to understand and practice, to leave this experience and understand what this technique about, this practice, this meditations specifically, and comparing them, what are the parallels and what is the core seed of it, and what is the main thing that actually connects them all this meditation. Of course, different goals, but different way. But the core is the essence of it looks really, really same.
Yeah.
And what I found is that later on, of course, I found this. I had experience of this God realization. I don't know, whatever we call it, but at some moment, I felt this, emptiness, and and me part of it, and I cannot explain it. It's even unexplainable state of being when you are so you just feel that you are in the right place in this universe, and you're and you realize that there is no you, there is no delusion, there is no two, there is one. There is oneness, right? And I could feel that source, and it was that emptiness was fulfilling. It's in a rational way, it's very contradictory statement. The emptiness is fulfilling, but it's true. For me, it was very, very clear. Afterwards, however, my journey didn't end on traditions, and I went right away to explore what science can actually give us, and how can it be helpful in terms of meditation. That's how I met secular meditation. And we know that the Western world popularizing mindfulness approach, which is a secular practice, science-based, mindfulness-based programs and interventions, and I know 100% that the roots of it is traditional practices from Buddhists, Taoism, Hinduism. All these techniques were taken from these doctrines, but in a way they simplify them, they secularized them, and they just took out something that can be very heavy, like like deep philosophy or some mystical things. They simplified them and started to explore how it can be, how it causes effect if people practicing them. And they found an interesting thing. It works. It can change your brain. It can change your life. It can change your perception. It can change your state of being. And you can be more happier and less suffer.
Yeah.
That's, I realized it through practicing mindfulness. And I started to, and I become mindfulness teacher. I spent years and dedicated myself to study. And I had this teaching pathway, the trainer's pathway. And when I finished the Mindful Academy Saltarena, which is in Spain, international school, international academy, and I became a qualified MBSR teacher, which is mindfulness-based stress reduction program. I found myself in, I felt that it's something that I was born to in this life. I felt that it's my thing, it's my mission. So I dedicated myself to share practices, and I saw how they changed people's life, and it continued to change my life. Actually, and I found everything that I've been studying, this essences, this principles, this core wisdom of traditional practices in this mindfulness approach. Even though it's not really full, I would say, but it's simple and they have key elements in it. Like what is a core principle, what is essence, how it practiced, and how and it's actually accessible to everyone. You don't have to be a Buddhist to practice them. So that's how I become mindfulness teacher, and I still practice them. And you know what you said in the beginning, you mentioned about your way, and then you started to expand, as I felt, to add different kind of traditional practices. You still find yourself in this all practices, right? Your pathway started to emerge under your feet, right? You were just doing practicing what you do, right? So I think likewise I did the same, and I still practice different kind of techniques from different traditional practices that I did in my past.
That's interesting. You kind of have to find what works for you, and also integrate it into some sort of structure that you can keep going with. I found like my understanding of meditation changed deeper I went into it, which kind of allowed me to integrate some of these practices. Because essentially, when you sit down and meditate, you have your physical body, you have your consciousness, and you're trying to somehow detach yourself from your ego. Mm-hmm. And that whole idea is what's confusing, I think, to most people. When they think about meditation, they think about it as like an activity. It's something that they're doing. Mm-hmm. But that's actually an illusion of their own mind, based on their concept of reality. And everybody's guilty of it. And so I try to switch up the perspective. So it's more of like a witness type philosophy, where you're always the witness. The witness is always there. That consciousness is always there. Yeah. And so no matter what practice you're doing, it's that consciousness that is actually facilitating it. Not me, like, okay, I'm going to have this experience. Of course, there's results when you put in effort. And that's the whole, confusing aspect of like, well, how is this working? I'm actually doing something. Yeah. So then I'll say cocky things to my friends that meditate, and they'll be like, they'll be put off or they'll be disturbed.
Yeah.
How can you control the results? Oh, well, I can control the results because I understand the core aspect of what's happening. And if I follow step 1 through 3, I'm going to get enlightened in 3 hours. So watch, I'll be enlightened in 3 hours. I'll see you later. And they'll be like, what? You're going to be enlightened in 3 hours? How is that possible?
Yeah, there's a, perception. Everyone's perception different. And of course, what I learned from teaching mindfulness, one thing that people are not ready to get this, the core wisdom of these practices, because it's something that contradicts their perception. They don't understand it. And that's why they start from something like achieving mode, doing mode, this goal-oriented approach, and me doing that. Of course, this is.
There a term in secular Buddhism? Do they have a word for that mode of like me doing something?
Yeah, they do, but I don't remember that. I have this mind map that I created, especially that not Zen. It's mostly about Tibetan Buddhist and Theravada, which is also one of the big, like Mahayana and Theravada. It's a big wheels of Buddhist, and different. They have differences between each other, but anyway, the core principles are the same, and they have words like on Pali or Sanskrit explaining different kind of state of minds and this I, ego, and so on. But I don't remember all that. Some of them, of course, then I can remember, like chitta, like mind. When we use this word, it means that we are so stuck in it. We think that we are that there's a sense of I. But when you start meditating, you go beyond a little bit. You start observing yourself. It's like in a simple word saying, but it's not about I'm observing myself. It's observedness, observing I, right? And you're just connecting with this the point of observation, let's call it in this word, right? But for I, it's very hard to accept that there is no I, of course, because we're dual. We have this dual mind, and for the beginners, if you try to explain them, their mind will blow, and they will just say, no, I'm not going to practice it. I want to keep my I with myself, right? And this is a main, actually, barrier that people are facing. But at some point, when they dedicate themselves, they go deeper, they start to expand, they go beyond their I and mind, and they see this fullness, this observedness, and they see that there's actually possibility to experience this fullness and non-dual state of being. They really starting to understand, and the mind start to accept that. Oh my God, I experienced that. There's something that there is no I can feel that. I can experience it. Then they're more open to go further. Then they can relate to this understanding that I'm not doing a process. Process is just there. I'm just there. There's just observation. I connect to this field of the full awareness. Which is shunyata, emptiness, this consciousness. Many words they use, especially in traditional doctrines and philosophies, and they're precisely explaining through specific words, specific terms of this chitta mind or shunyata, emptiness, or many words. And even there is no translation for it in English or other Western languages, because they don't have such experience.
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
So I created a diagram here. I made this myself. So the ultimate self, the ultimate empty space, is in the center there. And so we're kind of like on this outside level. And as we go within, you have these different types of like awakening. So let's say you have the earth in the middle here, and that's you. And in order to get to the enlightenment, you have to go through all these types of realizations.
Yeah.
And there's, I just kind of outlined some different states of consciousness.
Interesting.
That I found were relatable to different types of meditation groups. And each meditation group kind of has a pinnacle or a peak of experience where they kind of are limited in how far that they can take you. as far as experiencing that egolessness, the void, the lack of self, the
Yeah.
consciousness,
Yeah. Yeah.
to the ultimate, which is like complete God realization, where you become like a Buddha or you become like
Oh yeah.
Jesus,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know. Um, and it's interesting because like the different groups will be like adamant about it. Like for example, have you heard of the group Brahma Kumaris?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I went and I was hanging out with them for a couple months, and they when they found out that I had practiced with other Hindu groups, they were so adamant about the fact that the creator, or this light that you see in meditation, is separate from you, that it's observable, that you don't become fully one with it. And that was like a key philosophy in their practice, because they'd never gone beyond that. What I find with Buddhism, which is interesting, is there's this type of this emptiness, this void. But within that void, you do, like you said, you have a certain consciousness.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so within that consciousness is also the reflection of the actual creator. And that's the key kind of like launching point to get to that, higher state of God realization, where first you have to become completely empty. It's like you have to have
Yeah.
that perfect blank screen. And then the question for me became like, how do you ascend past emptiness? How do you go into these deeper, realms, these higher dimensions? And then it all became about a type of energy. So instead of like expanding my energy outside of this physical body, which I found was, important, you have to kind of have this awareness, this externalized awareness outside of yourself, so you don't identify as a physical being. What I discovered was I was actually absorbing energy from the universe. And the more of this like
Mm-hmm.
energy I absorbed, the more of like a currency. It was like it's like trying to like, when you're a kid and you want to take a trip to another country for the first time, you have to go out and get a job, and you've never had a job before. And that's kind of like meditation. So we're kind of new to this whole spiritual thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we're starting to meditate, and it's like we're earning a type of spiritual currency, and that currency allows us to travel up into the higher spiritual levels. And the more currency you can collect, the higher spiritual level you can ascend to. And there's it's almost seems infinite, like the
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's
I
really
agree.
wild.
I agree. You
But
know what
over,
I
yeah.
just adding on commenting on what you said about this the effect of collecting all these currencies. They have in neurophysiology, neuroplasticity, uh, this interesting fact about how our neural pathways um, when we practice something, they started to emerge. We strengthen them when we start to we even starting to create new pathways. So as more we do it, especially on like practicing, there are more neural pathways that we create, and they are responsible for this traveling. What you're just saying, because if you don't have these skills, this of traveling, you know, you cannot do that. You need to build this neural pathways, and even there are studies about how the psychedelic effect works. This LSD and DMT, all of them, they're different specific ways they're working, but the main thing that when you do it, your brain started to be active much more than it works in your usual state of consciousness. It expands actually. and it starts to activate different parts of your brain that are never before been active, and it allows us to see things that we never saw before. And it shows the reality as it is, and then it actually, because during this process of active, when the ACID works and it has active phase, when you do the psychedelics, all your part of your brains, your potential capacity starts to work fully, and then you feel what you feel, you experience what you experience. And if you're not prepared, if you don't know how to travel there, if you don't have skills how to travel, it will be something that, oh, I saw something, but I don't know what I saw. But when you have this capacity to, direct your attention, even during this experience of trip, you can travel there, you can explore, you can practice actually psychotherapy. If you do it like in a normal state of mind, state of consciousness, it takes like 5-10 years, for example, to process some deep trauma or whatever. In that state of mind consciousness, you can do it very fast, because there is evidence of it. People go there with specific intention, with a proper setting and preparation. They actually process their trauma. They process their addictions, and different kind of requests you can set in the beginning. That's how it works. And finally, studies are showing that it works. So meditation, the role of meditation is a key role actually there. If you don't have this capacity to stay where you are staying with your focus during this trip and direct it, you will not be able to go wherever you have intention to go for, because you don't have this power to travel there.
Kind of lost in the weeds.
Sorry?
You kind of get lost in the weeds.
Yeah, you lost. You become lost, and even when the effect of the ACID it's going down, you come back. You don't remember what was there.
Have you ever tried DMT?
Yeah.
So can you tell me your experience on DMT?
Yeah, it works a little bit differently than LSD, but okay. So my explanation of it, what was there, it was experience of being in the place after death. And it was very, very familiar place, and I've been there many times. There is very deep intuitive belief that emerged during this trip, that I was there many times. I died many times before. So that was a proof for me that there is a reincarnation exists. I knew that by my mind, because all the facts, all the wisdom of different doctrines and religions are showing and actually saying that there is an existence of reincarnation and samsara. But there I experienced that.
That's amazing.
And also for me, it was very important to realize what is the role of my life partner, my wife. And I also realized there that we were together many lives already. And it's not by accident that we are now together again. There is some specific mission for it. Of course, I started to discover, and I found a lot of questions emerged, of course, because before that, this knowledge didn't open for me. But during the trip, I saw it. And also there is a very clear feeling of not existence, but feeling of presence of God all the time. Presence of God everywhere. In me, around me, everywhere and nowhere. That's what was the effect of my
That's beautiful. Did you see any entities of any kind?
yeah, I saw, but I cannot explain. It was like some amorph forms, no forms, all the time change. And also there was fractals, of course. Beautiful sacral geometry, and you know, and the possibility of witnessing that and experiencing that only because of my previous background of practices. Otherwise, I couldn't see that. I couldn't realize that. I couldn't be aware of that, because awareness needs to be trained, be concentrated, focused, be able to expand your awareness, you know. And also, it's not about concentration and attention. It's also about your relationship, your attitude, your for example, trust, acceptance, openness, right?
Yeah.
Non-striving attitude. So this quality that we call beginner's mind. Just let go all your experience, your knowledge, be able to be open and allow what is coming and going, trusting that. And it's very hard in the beginning for people who never done this before.
Yeah, those are all really important qualities for meditation. How do you feel gratitude plays into that, to those
Gratitude,
qualities?
of course, and awe, this sense of awe, something divine, something very big, or something very powerful, and you feel yourself like tiny piece of sand in the universe.
That's beautiful.
And you are supported by all this emptiness and void.
I love that. That's really cool. Yeah, I was thinking about, Joe Rogan talks a lot about DMT, and he talked about an experience he had where he saw these kind of creatures that gave him the middle finger. And they basically kind of were giving him a message that he believed meant, hey, don't take yourself so seriously. Now, I had a similar experience in meditation that was non-DMT induced. So I started seeing visions in my meditation experience after I started practicing a certain type of meditation related to OBEs, astral projection. And that opened up this whole arena of visuals that I started interacting with. And I started being able to have these out-of-body type experiences through a meditation practice. I always wanted to have like straight OBEs, out-of-body experiences, where I fully separated. And I've only actually had a couple of those. But this other type of out-of-body experience related to meditation is very similar to DMT. And you're able to get a lot of messages from your subconscious that way. So I actually had an experience with an entity that also gave me a middle finger. For a long time, I didn't understand it until I heard Joe Rogan talking about his experience. Mine was, I wasn't on DMT, but I saw this entity. It came up to me, and I said to it, I said, "Who are you?" And I was meditating. My eyes were closed. So we were kind of like in this dark place, and I just see this entity, and it didn't have any eyes. Like skin was grown over its eyes.
Wow.
And I said, and he was short. He was like kind of like an elf-like creature with like, big feet, big hands, big nose, big ears, kind of like a square type face.
Oh.
I said, "Who are you?" And he was like, "I'm the all-knowing seer." And he asked me a question. He said, "Do you want to know how you're doing?" And I was a little bit scared of this guy. I said, "No, not really. I don't want to know how I'm doing." And he said, "You're doing pretty good, And I said, "Okay." And then he gave me the finger.
Wow. Yeah.
But yeah, these experiences of DMT can take you to these other worlds. They can open up things, but through meditation, you can also open up these places too.
Exactly. What's what I clearly understood, this shortcut, let's call it shortcut, DMT, and all this psychedelic experience, mystical experience that is possible through shortcuts with substances. But the hardest part is do it through meditation on a daily life. And I, you know, what I opened with my practices is lucid dreaming, actually.
Yeah, I've been into lucid dreaming as well.
It's amazing, and it can be very useful. And I started to explore more about Tibetan yoga of dreaming, of lucid dreaming, and they have
you ever meditated in a lucid dream?
Met who?
Meditated.
Yes, yeah, of course. And it's you know, it's like I cannot explain how. But you know what? Let's leave it for the next hour meeting, because I feel like we have a lot of things to share and explore together. How the meditation can be very interesting and can open many doors to spiritual life, to normal life, to happier life, you know. But
I'm going to say one last thing.
Yeah.
And it relates to what we were talking about earlier about studying psychology. So for me, I was trying to learn self-acceptance.
Yeah.
And through the practice of being present in the moment and being mindful, I realized that when I was fully present, I was fully self-accepting.
Yes.
And self-acceptance was extremely difficult for me as a young man.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really striving, even though I was having these like amazing experiences, it wasn't until I really learned how to accept myself that I began appreciating meditation and practicing gratitude and learning how to, you know, be in awe, as you say, of these types of experiences. And all these smaller kind of subtle traits or qualities that you have are really important. And some of these bigger experiences are not necessarily that really, because they come and they go, right? So what's really important is the subtle practices of just being open-minded, or just being aware, self-aware, you know, self-introspective. These subtle practices are actually a lot more important than striving to have these huge breakthroughs.
Yeah, and this is a main actually intention of all mindfulness approach, to be present and practice self-acceptance, self-compassion, you know, self-trust. And it's not about only self, it's actually all this attitude and all that can be, you know, manifested to the outer world. So, but we start from ourselves, and this is a important thing. Greg, I think we can stop on this today. For those who watched us, thank you for your attention, thank you for your interest. You can leave your comments below and ask and share maybe your experience. What I also wanted to maybe what do you call it? I forgot the word in English. Anyway, want to say that we have intention with Greg to gather all the knowledge and experience that we have from our background about meditation, and maybe share some, what we call it, gather it into one project. And we're working on this product, let's call it product or project, where you can later at some point purchase it and use it for your own in your own life, and use it for your own more happier life, let's say, and less suffer, and maybe expand your vision of what is about meditation. Actually, we have a lot of things to share, so you can join us next time and see us here. You want to add something here?
Oh, I just wanted to say next time I'd really like to talk about this author called Swedenborg. Have you heard of him?
Swedenborg. What is the book's name?
He's like a Christian mystic. This is,
Okay. Divine Love and Wisdom. Interesting.
so he
I heard.
he goes into the demon realm. So I wanted to talk a little bit
Wow.
that next time.
Yeah, let's uncover that. Yeah, let's explore that. And also we can talk, yeah, as you said about Christian mysticism. Yeah, we can touch all this monotheistic religions that also has their own meditations. And Christian mysticism is full of meditation practices, actually, contemplative, introspective, and we
Yeah,
can explore that as well.
This Christian mystics book, Gateways into the Light by Flower Newhouse. That's her right there. She's a Christian mystic. She channeled a bunch of angels, and she focuses more on like she does meditation, but it's more free form where you can kind of change up the meditation practice, which I find kind of refreshing. You don't have such a rigid practice. You can kind of
you can be free in your creativity, actually.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool.
Great talk.
Greg, thank you. Next time, see you, and let's discuss that.